just wanted to show you this soup. I call these soups leftover soup. This is a chunk of frozen winter squash. It was, a big container of it, and it's melted down. That's what's left. This was basically, we had tacos last night with shredded pork and rice, and I had a bunch left, and the pork was in this beautiful broth. So I went ahead and just mixed the pork and the rice together. And then I started adding all sorts of veggies and a little bit of water. So there's onion and broccoli and zucchini and some frozen wild mushrooms that I had, carrot, and then that winter squash. And then I may end up adding some tomato paste and maybe a little coconut aminos. I'll just kind of taste it as it goes. So the veggies haven't cooked down into this yet, so a little bit later this will look like a very different soup. And I just wanted to show you because it's such an easy way to make a second meal off of your first meal. I always make extra rice or potatoes or pasta. I always make extra protein, and even if I'm sauteing veggies, I make extra veggies because then I can throw that like in breakfast the next day. So this is leftover soup. It is going to be delicious. I watch a lot of videos from people in warmer climates than me. And for the last week or so, they've been in sweaters. And I've been so confused because I've been in tank tops. Well, it found us. This cold front that's moving in found us. And I am in my cozy flannel with my fingerless gloves, cup of tea. Dave and I have been very sick. It's a cold that just doesn't stop. I thought that I had gotten over it a day and a half after I had it. And then he got it. Eli was the one that started it. And then his has been a couple weeks. And I either re-got it or I never really had it or something. So we've just been kind of very low energy and extra cold, because when you don't feel well, you tend to be extra cold. And I have so many projects that have been piling up. So today, for the first time ever, I'm going to braid onions. Let's try it. From what I understand, you need some string. There are a couple ways to do this. One is you don't have to braid them. You can actually use the string and make a loop. Basically what you do with that loop is you take the onions and you put them around the string and you basically loop them like that. And I like that idea a lot, and I may try that one. But first I'm just gonna try this simple braid, which really is, it's kind of it reminds me of French braiding. So you start with one onion and you tie the string around the onion. And I tried to make that kind of even, but I probably didn't. So there's the beginning. And then when you add your other couple of onions, let's see here. You're gonna crisscross those over the first one. So you're basically starting the braid, and you're gonna incorporate the string into that. So let's see, we've got the first crisscross here. And then once you've done that, you add in another center one. And you just continue the braiding. You're gonna end up with, something like this that looks a little longer. So I'm gonna work on that. right, so here's my first one. It's a little looser than I'd like, but I think it's fine. It doesn't, I mean, it's rough because that was my first time doing it. And I think I had the braid off a little bit. But that's kind of fun, isn't it? Really pretty. And so I just kept braiding it up the top, and then I took the strings and I created a loop so that I can hang it. And I probably, I might make the loop smaller because this is a big loop, but I wanted to have a little give there so that I could decide where exactly I want to put it. And you can make these a little longer. They don't have to be this short, but I like the idea of them being in just small bunches. This is the perfect bunch to bring upstairs to my kitchen. We'll work through that in a couple of weeks and then be able to move on to the others, which I will hang in a cool, dark place. Not a perfect little braid, but I am so proud of this. I am so proud of this. I just trimmed off the little ends and I've just pulled some of the papers off. This one is gonna have to be used first, as you can see. It's, yeah, I probably shouldn't have put that one on the braid, but I just didn't notice it when I was doing it. But I'm gonna work on these. I've got a whole table full of onions, and hopefully I can, get I don't know, I'll probably get 5-6 braids out of this and then just hang them around and be so proud of myself for growing these beautiful onions. And we've already eaten a ton of onions and I've made onion jams, so this is kind of like the remaining onions that seemed to be pretty solid for storage. These are my real life piles. I had the brown rice in the freezer and that's gonna go in storage, and I wanted to make sure there were no bugs in there because my quinoa, I didn't freeze it and it just exploded with bugs, and I lost 25 pounds of quinoa, so I'm not doing that again. So I put the brown rice in the freezer, and then I had some more stuff out for the teens who came and did a fire pit the other night. I've got some stuff that came from upstairs. I've got this stuff that needs to go upstairs. I'm starting to wash the drying rack because I had done tomatoes, so those needed to be washed out. But then I just glance up and say, oh, it's so pretty. I like that better than I like my real life piles. But the real life piles are important, and we shouldn't pretend they don't exist when we make these videos. So I do want to make sure that I show you my real life piles. You see the microwave's gone. The microwave's gone, the microwave's gone. I am so excited the microwave's gone. And I've been working on the kitchen. It's so close, it's so close. Pretty much set up down here where I've got my dehydrator, my ball cookbook, canning cookbook. Green tomato jam is next. I've got my water bath canner. I need to go get more paint so I can finish up here. And then I got the most special vintage spice rack to go behind here. It is so pretty. I got it off Facebook Marketplace. And then here's my jam. I need to still work on these shelves, figuring out like a little system. I'm gonna have the coffee here. Got some bowls, you know, just the whole thing. So it's been really special to have this little space. Once the microwave left, I mean, I don't know if you guys watched any of the videos, but the microwave was so low down that I couldn't even read the clock. I couldn't even see the buttons. I had to kind of like duck down. It was so huge. This space has opened up incredibly. When we took it down in the upstairs kitchen, we took this shelf down too and we put a hood in, but these ceilings are so low. And there's just no point to doing that. There won't be a ton of cooking that happens down here. There's plenty of ventilation with the window that's right next to it. So we're not gonna do anything like that, but it has made a huge difference. And I just love my little station down here. So one of the projects that I needed to do was make pear jam. And we are kind of jokingly calling it placenta pear jam. There's no placenta in this pear, I promise. And it also didn't gel up very well, so it's probably more like a pear sauce, which I'm totally fine with. So when Lucas was born, I was still married, living in a pretty much 800 square foot bungalow. It was like an old Sears home that was built. And Lucas was born there in our bed, beautiful home birth. Started out as a water birth, but when it came down to time for transition, my body wouldn't transition in the water, and my midwife had to get me out. And as soon as I got out, I went into transition and had that baby fast. So wasn't the water birth I had dreamed of, but it was a sweet, sweet birth nonetheless. And we put Lucas's 14, just for some perspective, we put his placenta in the freezer. And then never did anything with it. I just felt like, one, we lived in a city and there were a lot of rats. I didn't feel like burying it out there. I knew it wasn't going to be my forever home. I was just enrolling in school to become a health coach, and I just kind of tucked it in the freezer and we let it be. Fast forward many years, and after my divorce, time had passed, and gosh, I can't remember when it was. I can't remember if it was this house or the urban farmhouse, but at some point Patrick was like, can I give you the placenta? Because it was still in the freezer. And I was like, of course. So the placenta has traveled around. So the placenta ended up down here in the apartment freezer. And one time I had my friends Madeline and Persephone over after a retreat. And I had to run out for something, and Persephone and Maddie were going to make dinner. And I said, there's ground turkey or ground meat in the freezer or fridge, I can't remember what I said, that you guys can use, because Persephone was making a meatloaf. And so Madeline comes upstairs with the placenta. Now I'm not here, and it's Persephone making the meatloaf. And Persephone kind of takes a look at it, and she like starts to unwrap it, and she realizes it's a placenta, because her child, who was 1 year younger than mine, she still had his placenta in her freezer. So she knew exactly what a frozen placenta looked like. So luckily we did not have a placenta meatloaf that night. So the placenta has traveled quite a bit. So finally I decided, I know this isn't our forever home. However, this is like the kids' very special home. This is the place where they have found community and friendships, and a school that really holds their heart. This is where they have really come into their own. So a couple years ago, Dave bought me a pear tree for Valentine's Day. And I decided that that is where we would put the placenta. So sweet Dave planted the placenta, like unfroze the layers. I think it ended up probably not completely coming off of all the plastic for like completely, and we just had to be okay with that. And he planted the placenta under the pear tree for me, which I just thought was the sweetest act of love and bonding, you know, between a child that, you know, is your stepchild and yourself. So we've called it the placenta pear tree. And last year we got some pears, and I didn't realize how inedible the skin was. And I made a pear sauce, and it was impossible to eat. Ended up giving it to the chicken, who I don't even think they ate it. And so this year I got this was 12 pounds of pears, but I think it probably is about 16 pounds of pears total from the tree. And I had to take all of the skin off, and I thought, well, let's make pear jam. So I didn't quite make it to the gel stage, even though I was using a thermometer. I probably should have just let it sit and get just like 1 degree higher just to make sure, but that was just a new thing for me. So basically, pear jam, I didn't video the beginning, but what you do, it's about 4 pounds of pears to 2 cups of sugar to 1/4 cup of lemon, and you cut up the pears into tiny little chunks. You don't get much once you've taken the core out and the skin off. There's not much pear. So I used a little less sugar because I think my pears actually had much less meat on them than a pear you might buy from the store. So I did 12 pounds of pears to 5 cups of sugar. But basically it's 4 pounds of pears, 2 cups of sugar, 1/4 cup of lemon juice. and you cover the pear bits, the pear chunks, in the lemon juice and the sugar, and you mix it all up and you macerate that. So basically you're letting it sit overnight with the sugar and the lemon juice. And this creates just a beautiful jam. And you then take that and you put it in your pot and you get that up to a boil and you bring it up to 220 degrees, or right around the gel stage, which you can figure out by putting a little dollop of the jam on a plate, sticking it in your freezer, and then taking that out and running your finger through it. And if your finger can draw a line through the jam without it running back onto itself, then that means it's gelled. So I was probably like 3 minutes away, and I just cut it short, but pear sauce is delicious as well. So that is my placenta pear jam story. And so now we have, aren't these cute? This little size, I'd never found this before, but I love this little size. This is a 1/2 pint, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 11 1/2 pints. So that is 12 pounds of homegrown pears into 11 1/2 pints. Isn't that wild? I think that's wild. This just seemed like the best way for me to preserve it. I'm gonna keep 4 of these in our like storage, like kind of tuck them in the back for a wintry day. And then the other ones I'm probably going to gift out, because I just think this is just such a lovely special gift, and just offer these to some people. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep staying cozy, braid those onions, maybe think of how I can enjoy some of that jam today. But I did just want to share these 2 things in case these are projects that you were thinking about doing. If you can get your hands on some pears, this jam is really delicious, and it's so simple. And you can add things like ginger or cardamom or vanilla. What other things are good with pears? I don't know, I think ginger would be fabulous. I decided to go with a very basic jam just because I'm feeding kids who are a little bit sensitive, but probably next year when I do this with next year's pears, or if I have one more batch from the pears that are still ripening, I'll do something a little bit more creative and fun. But there's nothing wrong with just the simplest version of this. And this is a way to make use of fruit that you won't be able to fresh eat. That is just, you know, you might find that if you have a pear tree and you say, oh, I've never been able to eat this fruit, well, here is a way that you can make use of those. So let me know your favorite ways to use pears. I had definitely thought about a pear pie. I think this pear sauce / jam would be delicious with some vanilla ice cream or with some yogurt and granola. Oh, I just think it's so good. And you just need a tiny little bit because it is very sweet. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Bye. So we ended up with 6 of the braids. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the onions that just seemed to me that they weren't going to last very long went into this basket, and these will be the things that I use first. I might contemplate an onion jam actually out of those, so that's possible there, or I might just cut some up and put them in the freezer. So these are really pretty. It took me a while to kind of get the hang of it. Some are better than others. I'll definitely try the loop method maybe next year when I do these, but I just kind of wanted to see if I could get this braid thing down. It was a little tricky. I'll go and find some space to hang these, pop these upstairs, and that was a good day's work. I added a little bit of lemon juice, some coconut aminos, a little bit more salt and pepper, and I decided to hold off on the tomato. I'm gonna have a cup of this for lunch, and then maybe tonight for dinner I'll add some tomato paste in just to make it a little bit different.